Paul Olliges has a new book out. I've read it. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, welcome to this channel. If you're new here, my name's Gavi and I discuss all things to do with cults, religion, and fundamentalism with my friend Sadie Carpenter, who grew up fundy. If you want to support us, then you can subscribe to our Patreon and the link to that is in the description below. This April, fundy YouTuber Paul Olliges put out a book titled Pabs, Legend of Bloodfang. A lot has been said about this book online, but mostly by people who haven't actually read it. Some have speculated that this book was not actually written by Paul, but it was written with the help of AI, and whether this book's cover was generated by AI. And I'm going to get into that with this video today. This book is a kid's book. It's for grades 3 to 5. If you've got a kid who's younger than that, who's reading chapter books, this book is probably age appropriate for them. It's a tight 105 pages. It took me about 75 minutes to read. In his About the Author section, Paul describes himself as a connoisseur of children's literature. If you've got kids, if you're reading to your kids, you're going to inevitably become well-versed in children's books. Paul's got 2 kids with his wife, Morgan. On social media, Paul says that he's been working on this book for over a decade. So let's get into it. Pabs, Legend of Bloodfang, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm going to start off with the good, and for the good, I'm going to start off with the plot. So let me give you a quick summary here. Pabs and his brother Steed are 2 orphan elves. They're shepherds because they aren't war elves, and only war elves are allowed to join the Monster Protection Squad to fight against the hobgoblins. One day, it is announced by the chief of the village that he is holding open tryouts for the Monster Protection Squad. Pabs and Steed go to try out and get accepted. At this point, they also make friends with another elf called Skylake. Meanwhile, there are rumors abound of a giant black wolf called Bloodfang that is amassing an army of goblins to attack the village so it can eat all their sheep. So now Pabs and Steed and Skylake are on patrol at the Harvest Festival when Skylake reveals to them that she is actually a woman and has been in disguise as a cover because she used to be a thief. More hobgoblins attack and they're able to fight them off. Pabs and Steed go on a scouting mission against the wolf and the army of hobgoblins, at which point they find out that another one of their compatriots has been a double agent the whole time. Their team gets killed, Steed gets captured, and Pabs escapes. And by the time he gets back to the village, Bloodfang and the goblins have already taken the whole place over. But Pabs breaks everyone out of jail, he kills the wolf, and that's the end of the book. So that's what happens in this book. And the reason why I'm putting this in the good category is because it's coherent. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, there's foreshadowing, there are twists, there are things that are well set up. Paul actually makes effective use of red herrings here to prevent these twists from being obvious. For example, during the middle chapters, there's a rumor that one of the Monster Protection Squad members is secretly a double agent. I had suspected Bent, who is a character who had tried unsuccessfully to sabotage Pabs and Steed's Monster Protection Squad tryout. I had also suspected Skylake because she had earlier lied about being a thief. Neither of those characters turned out to be the double agent. The double agent this whole time had been Grizz, who is a character who had been on a scouting mission where Bloodfang had killed members of the Monster Protection Squad earlier in the book. I'm not going to go and complain that the plot was basic or, using lots of fantasy tropes because it's consistent and it's kind of apt for the genre. It's not supposed to be dark and gritty. It's not supposed to be Game of Thrones. It's a 105-page kids book about elves who fight against wolves and hobgoblins. Also in the good category, I'm going to put descriptions and imagery and world building that Paul does in this book. I think this is probably where Paul is having the most fun when he's writing. And that's when he gets to write about kind of the normal day-to-day lives of these elves. So at the start of the book, he does a good job of establishing setting and giving the reader a clear picture of what their world looks like. but also leaving enough up to the imagination, which I think is important in the kids' book. For a kids' book, you want to give them some description, but not too much, because then the text gets weighed down. And I think that Paul does a good job of this, and I'm going to give you an example of this. Steed brought his nose close to the pie and took a long sniff. He let out a satisfied, You were right, bro chap. I should never have doubted you. I laid the pie on the grass. I drew the dagger from my belt and proceeded to cut the pie into 4 perfect slices. Warm jelly oozed from the sides. I licked my blade clean and then went to work on the first piece. It was so warm and sweet and delicious. Steed and I didn't speak another word until we had finished the whole pie. That hit the spot, I said, springing to my feet. Let's find the games. The village folk were now streaming to the festival grounds. Steed and I gazed out over the seemingly endless acres of crowds, tents, and booths. I can really picture this scene happening. I think that Paul has the most fun when he's writing these parts of the book, and I kind of think that also because 10 of the 105 pages is spent at this festival. He also does the world building thing that some people like and some people don't, where you take a word or a phrase that we use in our world and then you change it slightly. Like, in this world, instead of saying brother, they say bro chap. The downside of him doing this is that instead of woman or girl, they say she elf. She elf.
There are only 2 genders.
Elf.
And
So that's the good. Now it's time for us to move on to the bad. And with the bad, I've got to start with the character of Pabs. Pabs, to me, feels like a self-insert Mary Sue, and he's just not very likable. So why do I suspect Pabs is a self-insert? Because Pabs is a seldom used nickname for Pablo. Pablo is the Spanish version of the name Paul. Pabs starts out the book as pretty much the best elf.
The best way to spread Christmas cheer is singing loud for all to hear.
And is really good at everything. It's not quite into what I describe as the Steven Seagal zone, where he is never allowed to lose a fight. But the only times he ever loses a fight is when somebody cheats or doesn't play fair or ambushes him. And the only time that you ever see him not the best at something is during the arrow shooting part of the Monster Protection Squad tryout, when he is shooting arrows at the target and he misses the bullseye until somebody tells him to relax, and then he nails the bullseye. During the challenge where they're supposed to go into the woods blindfolded to find an object that's like making a noise, they find it really quickly and only fail the test because they were sabotaged. He feels really bad that he failed, and he is resigned to his fate of being a shepherd forever. But the next morning he finds that he was sabotaged and that they're going to get into the Monster Protection Squad anyway, so everything is fine. As soon as he's on the Monster Protection Squad, he starts getting sent on important missions. I should point out that he doesn't seem to have any special abilities or qualities that make him best elf. He just is kind of best elf. Nobody is calling him a DEI hire. Nobody is questioning why Chief Cato is giving top secret high security missions to an unproven rookie and his unproven rookie friends, and not putting more experienced warriors on the mission with them as well. I didn't want to bring politics into this book review, but Paul Olliges has been on social media cheerleading the rollback of DEI initiatives. Meanwhile, the self-insert Mary Sue main character of his children's book embodies everything that the bad faith right-wing grifters who he loves to repost on social media claim is bad about DEI. Pabs is also kind of full of himself, and he's really conceited, and he thinks every girl is into him and that he's just like an alpha Chad.
I get more action in a week than you've had your entire life. I've got houses in LA, Paris, and Vail. Each one of them with a 70-inch plasma screen. So I suggest you wipe that stupid smile off your face before I come over there and smack it off.
He eats the most hot peppers to show how much of a boss he is.
North, please.
He He wins the fight against the guy who tried to sabotage his Monster Protection Squad tryout. He goes to the festival, he dances with the hottest girl, and he's really good at dancing, but he accidentally falls over and sits on her face and she gets mad at him and runs off, but he and his brother think that this whole thing is really funny. The whole time, Pabs doesn't have to do any of the things that like a hero from a story has to do, like learn a skill, go through a personal tragedy, do introspection, gain some new knowledge. And in order to be like, go through the hero's journey in order to be the one who can defeat the monster at the end. He's just naturally good enough. By the way that they defeat the monster at the end of this book is they just stab it in the stomach with a sharp stick, which seems crazy to me that nobody had tried that before. Pabs just happened to be the first one to try because, once again, he is the best elf. The character of Steed basically exists to give Pabs somebody to talk to.
And where would a brave knight be without his noble steed?
All right, I hope you heard that. She called me a noble steed. She think I'm a steed.
He is exactly 99% as good at everything as Pabs is. Steed also has no real character arc or distinguishing features except for that he gets captured at the end and Pabs has to come rescue him. There is one moment in the book where you get to see Pabs show some X factor, and that is when he disobeys the chief's direct order when he is on a mission so that he can rescue a fairy from a spider. It was important that he did this because then the fairy comes back later to save him, but he doesn't really face consequences for disobeying the order because his punishment is just that he has to wash a bunch of dishes when he gets back to camp. So Paul kind of wants us to see Pabs as a bad boy, Giga Chad, rule breaker, maverick kind of guy, but he also shows himself to be kind of uptight and judgmental. A she-elf, hauling a lumpy sack about her shoulder, hurried past us in the opposite direction. I cocked my head to watch her go by. I had seen her before, selling produce in the market. She wore a sleeveless vest revealing toned arms that were darkened by the sun. Her hair fell below her waist, straight and black like a raven. Her grip on the sack slipped, and several ears of corn tumbled to the ground. I hurried over to help. "I've got it," she said, her green eyes flashing coldly. She snatched her corn from me and went on her way. "Good luck in the market," I called to her. I looked at Steed and winked. "She likes me." "You think every she-elf likes you," he said. "They all do." "Where do you think she gets her produce to sell?" Steed asked. "Her family probably runs a farm." "Why? She looks like an orphan to me," Steed said. "So you think she's stealing?" I asked. Steed shrugged. "She best not be," I said, still following her with my gaze. "Pretty or not, I don't go for thieves." Just a deeply unlikable character. Later in the story, it is revealed that their friend Skylake, who they meet at the Monster Protection Squad tryouts, is actually this she-elf in disguise and is in fact an orphan thief. However, the orphanness of Pabs and Steed and Skylake is never really addressed. What happened to their parents is never mentioned, alluded to, or discussed in any way whatsoever. How this affected them growing up is never spoken of. There is no, "we didn't have mom and dad, we only had each other and we looked after each other." There's none of this, like, when they find out that Skylake is a thief, there's no mention of, "life was hard for us growing up too without parents, but we didn't have to steal to get by, but we understand what you went through." Kids' stories don't just have the main character be an orphan because orphans are cool and tragic. They have the main character be an orphan because having a humble beginning is a great source of character motivation. Speaking of character motivation, it's not clear why Pabs and Steed want to join the Monster Protection Squad to begin with. The first chapter of the book is like a dream sequence in which Pabs is a Monster Protection Squad warrior and he's fighting hobgoblins and then he wakes up. So it's just said that this has always been his dream, but it's never really explained why or what about that he likes. My eyes jerked open. A crow cawed in the distance. I shuddered. It had started as a perfect dream and ended a nightmare. I sat up. Steed's tree hammock swayed gently in the moonlight. Why couldn't it have been real? More than anything else in the world, I longed to be recognized as an MPS warrior. I sank back in my hammock, inwardly loathing the village laws that required war elf parentage. I was not born to herd sheep. I punched the side of my hammock. I was born to fight. In that section, he says that he wants to be recognized, but being recognized as like a good fighter doesn't seem like a good motivation for a good person. Like desiring praise and accolades is not really a thing that motivates a good character. They're supposed to do it out of selflessness, out of like wanting to protect others, not out of like, I want people to tell me how good I am at fighting. And it seems to me like Pabs is just kind of a guy who likes fighting. And if that's the case, then I think he's the last person who should be a Monster Protection Squad warrior. If you're just a guy who likes shooting people, then the last job that you should have is a policeman.
Why do you want to become a police officer?
That's the big question now, isn't it?
Later, when training is really difficult, somebody makes an offhanded comment about, oh, wow, I would rather be a shepherd because it's peaceful and not dangerous, and Pabs thinks about it. I considered his words. Life before the Monster Protection Squad had been safer and much less painful, but it had also been dull, lacking excitement and passion. I couldn't go back to that life. From what I can tell, Pabs is just kind of a psycho. He thinks that he's better, smarter, more handsome, and cooler than everybody else. He gets bored easily, and he likes fighting people. And he is a stickler for the rule of law when it applies to other people, but he is happy to disobey direct orders when he feels like it. And this is the main character of a children's book. And speaking of this being a children's book, there is another big problem with this book that I am putting under the bad category. And that is that there is a stunning amount of grammatical errors in this thing. Usually I'm not like a stickler for that sort of thing, but this is a kid's book. And if you're going to make a book for children, then you have to use good grammar because the target audience of this book is still learning to read, and you need to set a good example, and they need to have books with proper grammar so that they can read them and so that they can learn proper grammar.
Yeah, I wrote a children's book. Who hasn't? I mean, kids can barely read as it is, so how hard can it be to write for them?
Page 37. The warrior next to me rocketed into the air with a spin. He brought his war staff down on mine so hard it nearly fumbled from my hand. So a war staff doesn't fumble. You fumble a war staff. You could say it nearly was fumbled. You could say, I nearly fumbled it. But it nearly fumbled doesn't make sense. Page 51. I threw my staff on the ground. One hand after the other, I began to climb. Steed followed, then Skylake. About halfway to the top, a strong breeze made the ladder creak. Paul. It's Ladder, not Latter.
I mean, have you seen that new game show Homonym?
Your next word is meat.
Oh boy. Like when two people run into each other.
Sorry, it's the other one. Your next word is stare.
Okay, the things you climb to get...
It's the other one.
It's always the other one. Let me see the card.
No!
Page 54. There's been activity, he began, west around Bamboo Pass. Lots of commotion over there. The hobgoblins are pouring into our woodlands like bog rats. That is hobgoblins plural, not hobgoblins possessive. Once again, this is not something that I'm usually particularly picky about. If I saw this in a text message, if I saw this in an internet comment, I wouldn't have anything to say about it. But Paul wants to get this book in school libraries. And if you want to get this book in school libraries, then you've got to have proper grammar and you've got to have proper punctuation. Like that, there's no two ways about it. However, these grammatical errors give me pretty much 100% certainty that this is Paul's actual own work and not some AI-generated slop. So we've done the good, we've done the bad, and now it's time for the ugly. And when I talk about ugly, I'm not just talking about this was in the book and I didn't like it. What I'm talking about is issues that go beyond the actual contents of the book that are like complete, just like non-starters. And there are two big ones. So Paul and his wife Morgan are Christian fundy influencers. And so when I was reading this book, I tried to keep an eye out for Paul trying to Trojan horse some evangelical Christian messaging into the story. There weren't any references to God. There weren't any references to Jesus. There weren't any references to submitting to authority. The only thing that was remotely religious in this book was the character Pabs praying before a meal. There was no mention about what God or gods Pabs was potentially praying to, but he was just praying before a meal. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing about that is objectionable in any way. And even if he was praying to the Christian God, C.S. Lewis can put Jesus in his book. Paul can put Jesus in his book if he wants, but he didn't, whatever. I would like to turn your attention to page 82, which is after the big Skylake is a woman reveal. They beat a bunch of hobgoblins. They go back to the village, and everyone is excited that they beat the hobgoblins. Elves lined up to shake our hands and praise our deeds. You saved the village. We are forever indebted to you, brave warriors. More than one lovely she-elf showed her gratitude with a kiss on the cheek. I received their kisses gladly. Skylake, however, said no thank you and insisted on a brief hug. Grammatical issues aside, on one hand, it's established that Pabs is a gigachad and all the ladies love him, and they demonstrate this by kissing him on the cheek. But this is a kid's book, so the cheek kisses can't be sexual. So Pabs isn't like getting any sort of like romantic or sexual gratification from the cheek kisses. But the cheek kisses are clearly sexual enough that Skylake has to turn them down because otherwise it would be gay.
If it sound gay, it's gay, and you gotta say no homo. How I know you're not a homo, Granddad, if you don't say no homo?
I'm not saying no homo.
Okay, you wanna be a homo.
If Skylake was trying to keep her cover, she could have accepted them without drawing suspicion. But once again, she can't because this is... I don't understand what's going on here. I don't understand. It's not an orgy. Or maybe it is an orgy, like a cheek kiss orgy. Maybe that's the implication. Is this a cheek kiss orgy? Paul, tell me if it's a cheek kiss orgy. Why can't Skylake get the kisses on the cheek? Like, what's going on here? I don't know. The other big issue with this book, and this is the thing that the internet has been going in on, is the cover. So when I first saw the cover, I thought that it was like some Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess fan art that got repurposed into being the cover of Paul's book.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
However, people on the internet suggested that the cover was generated using AI. And now there's a lot of ethical issues with AI art. I'm not particularly a fan of it. Personally, I think that AI art takes work from real artists. I think that AI art is also problematic in that it uses the intellectual property of artists without compensating them. So I'm not personally a fan of AI art. There are also art styles that are associated with certain artists that are being shamelessly copied without those artists receiving compensation. And the recent example of this was the Miyazaki Studio Ghibli style being copied to use to make AI images. So the idea of using AI to generate your book cover is kind of a non-starter for me. So I decided that I wanted to investigate and see whether or not the book was actually had a cover that was designed by AI or if it was designed by a real artist. On the copyright page of the book, Paul says that the cover was created by an artist named James from GoOnWrite.com. GoOnWrite.com is a website where you can choose from pre-made book covers to buy the rights to use for your book. I went to this website and you will not believe what I found. This is the front page to GoOnWrite.com right now at the moment that I'm recording this video. The Bum Sniffer, Not House Trained, Waggly Tails, Sexual Walkies, and Bow Wow Wonder. In addition to this, there is a lot of gay erotic fiction. Not that I have a problem with gay erotic fiction, but Paul Olliges, notable Christian influencer, very much has a problem with gay erotic fiction. Paul Olliges, Christian influencer, went to this website, saw Bow Wow Wonder, and decided that this is where he, a good Christian man, a husband and father, would get the cover art for his children's book from. Hypocrisy aside, GoOnWrite.com is a website where for the low price of $50, you can purchase a book cover that you own all the rights to, so you can use it for your book. No issues with commercial rights, no issues with copyright, any of that stuff. You can choose from pre-made covers or you can have a custom cover made. If you want a custom cover made, the custom covers are made either from stock images or from AI-generated images. So Paul didn't just AI generate his own book cover. Paul paid somebody $300 to AI generate a book cover for him, which seems insane to me. If you're going to spend $300 on a book cover, why wouldn't you just get a real artist to do it? Why wouldn't you just ask somebody who is a real artist to read your book or to send them some excerpts from your book and tell them the general plot and ask them to make a cover for you with their skills as an artist? I think that would generate a much better result than just using AI to do it. Not only is he not doing the cost-effective thing, which would be generating a cover using AI, he's also not giving the work to a real artist. So it's all of the drawbacks and none of the benefits. I could go on Fiverr right now with a $300 budget and find an artist who would design me a cover for a book. In fact, I already did that, and this is the result. Caitlin W., I will craft a stunning, unique book cover without AI tools, starting at $65. Then you can go up. Oh, there's a $200 option. There's a $275 option. All of that for less money than you would get at goonright.com. Let me look at this. Oh, interesting. It says here, I won't design covers for LGBTQ themes, demonic content, or NSFW/erotica. Luckily, there's no female to female in disguise cheek kisses in Paul's book, so he's going to have no trouble getting a cover from Caitlin W. if he really wanted to. In conclusion, this book was not very good. I didn't think it was very good. Even if you're saying it's a kid's book, it's not supposed to be Tolstoy, I think it's not very good because it fails at the things that kids' books are supposed to do well. If I were to give constructive criticism to Paul about this book, I would suggest a rewrite. I would actually advise him to make it longer, because if you make it longer, then you can put in more character development. You can flesh things out a bit more. Like, you can give more backstory to the characters. You can give them a real arc. I want characters that are drumsticks, and Paul's giving me chicken backs. There's not a lot of meat there. Make your characters truly understand what failure means and what it feels like. Get into their heads. Tell us what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and then give it to an editor who is going to fix the typos. Give it a real cover and put it out, and you might have something good. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast. If you're interested in supporting us, there's a Patreon. There's a link down below in the description where you can subscribe to our Patreon. Sadie and I are going to have a much more in-depth discussion of this book coming out on the podcast in a couple weeks. I believe that the episode that's coming out on Monday is going to be an episode about how they choose the Pope. Sadie and I have some really cool pieces of history that you're going to want to check out for that one. Hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.